Hi everyone, welcome to our Blab show today. Are you an emotional caretaker?
Yeah.
Dawn Wiggins. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and my co-host is the beautiful and caring Dagmar Gattel. She is an SEO expert, and I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we will get to our topic.
Thank you so much for having me, Dawn. I'm an SEO consultant coach, and I help entrepreneurs, small businesses, and subject matter experts to turn their expertise into global business. What excites me a lot to be here with Dawn on her blabs, because all entrepreneurs are humans, right? So any topic Dawn speaks about and teaches us is really something I can integrate in my business, and every other entrepreneur can integrate in their business, because we're all dealing with the issues, self-esteem, self-forgiveness, or our topic today, emotional caretaker, where I'm still working on, because I'm for sure I'm with that with my clients. I want to hold their hand and bring them to the point and take everything heavy away from them, which is not good. It doesn't benefit them nor me. So very excited to hear more about that, Dawn.
You're not alone, Dagmar. I have a client that is a veterinarian, and he runs a vet hospital, and he has a lot of employees and other doctors that work with him. And we're working on a proposal for me to do a speaking engagement with his peers because of this exact issue. So any career, truly, burnout can become an issue if you're an emotional caretaker and you don't really learn how to take care of yourself first and know how to say no. Without feeling guilty. That's the key. If you say no and you don't learn how to let go of the guilt, then you're still going to be in pain. So it's about practicing both.
Yes.
So, thanks so much for being here with me today. I always appreciate it. So today's topic, emotional caretaking. So there are a lot of us that are naturally caretakers. And so I don't want to talk about it as though this is something that is wrong or bad. Being supportive and loving to the people in our lives is a wonderful quality. What we're talking about today is when we take care of other people's needs to the detriment of our own needs. That's the pattern that we want to look for and we want to interrupt, because in those instances, that's how we become burnt out, whether it's as parents, as partners, or in our career, or physically in our health suffers, either emotionally or with some sort of illness. Caretaking for others to the detriment of ourselves is really what we're looking for. So I'm going to teach you today 5 things to look for and ways to say no when you don't really feel like doing something. So this is also known in the world of mental health or personal development or self-help as codependency, although that is a word that some people get frustrated with because they feel like codependency or being labeled as a codependent is not a nice thing, or that codependency is kind of the catch-all bucket to put like any type of emotional dysfunction. But that is a word that can be used kind of synonymously with emotional caretaking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what you just said, because not helping is seen as negative too, right? So not helping, as I grew up, my parents always teach me, be a good girl and you help everybody. And when our neighbors need you or anybody else from the village, you help out. So you are so used to help out that you're not questioning it anymore. And you don't make a conscious decision. Do I want to help? Can I help? So it just goes so into your blood. So when you're in doubt, you just do it all the time.
Absolutely. And we do want to help others. That's a valuable thing. It can help. Helping other people can help with symptoms of depression, when we're isolated or stuck. It's that idea of kind of getting out of your own way or out of your own head, realizing that other people have troubles too. You're not alone. It can feel really good to help someone, which can help boost your mood and your self-esteem. So there's a lot of value in helping to care for others. It can create really strong and lovely reciprocal relationships. But again, we're talking for the purposes today about when we do it to the extent that we lose track of our own needs.
Yeah. So I think this and what you just said, because it made me think about it, when helping others doesn't feel good, because we can feel in our tummy, like I love to help others, But when others ask me for something where I don't feel it's truthful, or I don't feel they really don't care about me, they really don't love me, just want to take advantage of me, then I can feel in my tummy like it doesn't feel good, and I really don't want to say yes, but sometimes I did.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is what I often coach my clients, to let their yeses be yeses and to let their no's be no's. And if you're letting one of your no's be a yes, that is the birthplace of resentment. So you hit it on the head. It's about when you have that gut sensation or something is kind of saying to you, maybe this isn't the best choice for me today. And the best way to say no in that circumstance is to just be honest in a really loving and caring way.
Yeah.
So the first thing that we want to look for if we're an emotional caretaker and we've started to suggest or be aware that it's a pattern that's detrimental is to look at how often this pattern happens and what are some of the consequences we might have experienced. So I mentioned some of them in the intro, meaning is your own health and happiness on a decline because you're overcommitted to taking care of others. So the first thing to do is to really assess where you are in this process and the places where you would benefit from starting to say no. And then when you have an opportunity to say no, when you realize that that's really what you want to say, to just say to that person, I really have recognized I'm overcommitted and I'm not able to do that for you today. However, don't stop asking. I always would love to be part of your support system, or, whatever works for you. But just to be honest and truthful, because sometimes people get really used to us saying yes all the time. Mm-hmm. And then when we suddenly shift that boundary and we say no, sometimes people can become frustrated or confused and take it personally, which you're not responsible for if someone else takes your no personally. But you can, kind of offset that by setting the stage and letting them know what's going on and that they didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm. I think if you're honest, like what you said, if you're honest and you speak with somebody, they love you, they understand it. If they don't love you and they just try to take advantage, then that's fine if they don't understand it.
And what you just said ties back to a lot of other lab topics that we've discussed about trust and forgiveness and those kinds of things, because when you do start to set boundaries to take care of yourself, you're absolutely right. The people that care about you and respect you are going to start to be more obvious, and it will help create more trusting relationships because you'll know where you stand with the people in your life.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's a great tool to really learn about who your close friends are and where the safe places are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just saw Sala joined us and she wrote, love this, Dawn, letting your yes be yes and your no be no. And I think that's so crucial to realize that. And Sala, if you want to join Dawn and me, if you want to come in and ask your questions, just feel free to click on the chat and come in or post them in the chat box. So
yeah, hi Sala.
Dawn and I, we are happy and we are here to share, and especially Dawn here to give you guidance and just share from her expertise and her knowledge.
Yes.
How to deal with that.
Jump in. So the next thing that we want to look for with emotional caretaking is to not believe the lie of perfectionism. This one is really, really, really key. Well, sometimes people think that the word perfectionist means that everything in your life is like perfectly in order and that you're completely organized, and that's not the case. Perfectionism is that urge to do things to be liked or to be approved of. And so that urge, because we don't want to feel the feeling of rejection, or we don't want to feel the pain of someone maybe not liking us or not approving of our choice, sometimes that's when we let our no's become yeses. And so those are really, really key to pay attention to when the urge to be a perfectionist lies to us and tells us that we have to do something in order to be liked, loved, or accepted.
Yeah, and I think it's easy because, like, again, your environment, your childhood, that's where I think we are shaped the most subconsciously.
Absolutely.
And then later on, right now, I'm still improving. I'm still self-developing. who do I want to be, or who am I really?
Who am I
from
really?
my core? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And for entrepreneurs, where I see my clients struggle is if they're afraid about losing business, if they say no to a client, or if they set a limit. So they'll say yes to everything to try to be, the perfect business owner or the perfect employer. They're afraid of conflict with a client or with a coworker. And the reality is that as long as you're standing in your truth, you're doing it from a loving, kind place, then again, your healthy relationships are going to float to the surface. And if you do ever lose business or an employee as a result of saying no for the purpose of self-care, then trust that it's going to be okay, and you're going to find an adequate and appropriate soul to fill that slot.
Yeah.
Especially when you're putting your energy in the direction of self-care, which is a loving thing for yourself and for other people.
Yeah. You know what you just said, let's talk about that for a minute, for every entrepreneur who's watching live or listening to the recording, right? So every entrepreneur I know, when you start with your business, you have small funding or sometimes no funding. There is a desperation, right? Yeah. So out of a desperation, like immense, I know at least 90% of entrepreneurs, out of a desperation, you take on any client you can get because you need the money and you need to pay the bills. What at the beginning started out of a temporarily thing suddenly becomes your motto, becomes your theme, becomes how you deal with business. And I think that's the danger. And what you just said, you said trust in the process, or in general, you say, I love that, trust in the process, where sometimes you say, have faith. And I think that's really what it is, have faith. When you say no, you make space for a new client you can say yes to.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm learning from you. It's true. It's a bigger vision. It's a bigger picture. It's a lot of spirituality. What do you believe in? Do you believe in struggling forever, or do you believe there are solutions you can move forward?
And by shifting that underlying core belief that there is another way, it allows you to open your mind to other ideas, other creative ideas. And Dagmar, you're saying I'm teaching you, but you teach me. You are definitely one of the people on my support team, which I always say is helpful for any of these blog topics in order to change and grow. You're one of the people on my support team that has taught me different things to do so that I can be taking care of myself and I don't have to overextend. I don't have to burn out. And there are plenty of people out there that want to be in relationship with me and like to have me as their therapist. And I don't have to live in fear or any kind of concern that there's not enough. There's not enough. There's always enough. It's a combination of having the faith and making the space and also doing the footwork. But I think that when we're caught in the pattern of overextending ourselves and saying yes to everything, we don't have time to have the creative energy or to learn other tools in order to attract people to us that are going to respect the way we are living our life.
Yeah. And I just thought about something else, because you are my most perfect example, right? You're a mom of a little one. You're a committed wife. You just got a new home. You have a local business with eight on your team. You build up a global business, and you're struggling with your chronic illness.
Yes.
Like other people, they would think, I cannot handle all that, right? So it's easier for me to just focus on helping others. I don't really want to deal with figuring it out for my own life. And it's easier to put my head in the sand and say, okay, goody, by helping others, I feel good about it. Perhaps I'm struggling forever, perhaps my whole business life, but I do something good. So at the end, and I didn't realize that, but it becomes an excuse. I don't need to figure out how I can build my local business, my global business, take care of my family, deal with my illness, take care of myself. When I need a break, I need to stop and whatever, take a 50-minute nap. So really what I'm learning from you with the emotional caretaker, I need to put myself first. Where do I want to go? What are my plans? What do I want to accomplish? And then how can I help others?
Yeah, I really appreciate your kind words, Dagmar. And I'll tell you, all of those things you said about me are absolutely true. And the thing that probably propelled me the most to have to learn how to say no and to stop being an emotional caretaker is the chronic illness. Because it literally brought me to my knees, and it got to a point where I would push myself so hard that I would end up in the emergency room. And to break that cycle, I had to radically shift my life. And I think that early on in coping with my diagnosis, that gave me what felt like an easy out to say no to things. But I also started to learn that you can't say no forever either, because then you're not grooming your relationships. So it really is a balance of taking care of yourself and being present to your relationships and knowing your own limits and when you need to really focus on yourself or your family or your business. And people can understand that when you are there for them when you're able to. So it was a learning curve for me, no doubt.
Without a question. I wonder how Sala thinks about that. Sala, what's your take on that? Because you and I, we talk a lot about this. Do you want to come in and share what's your take on how you deal with the yeses and nos? Oh yeah, jump in, come on.
I'll see her call in, right? Yep, there
yeah.
She is.
They have a new system at Blob. You have to check them out, show the caller, and then accept them. Hi,
Sala. So good to see you. Welcome.
Yeah.
Tell us about your yeses and your nos.
Well, I have to say that this topic really speaks to me also. That's why I jumped in, because the last time I was on Blab, it was such a positive energy that the next day I just felt in the flow. I can't explain it, but it's really... I really have to give back this. I felt excellent, really.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And I just wanted to say, Dawn, when I heard Dagmar speak about your life, I was like, I wanted to write in the, chat box, like, wow, 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 because it's like, it's kind of, yesterday we had a discussion about technology and why blabs and periscopes and everything, but I think these are the moments that I cherish the most, because, for example, I can join a blab and I can learn so many new things or learn so many interesting things, and I just say I'm utterly grateful, really. So and regarding the saying no, I can totally relate with both of your stories. I think I was also raised as a natural, let's say, caregiver or caretaker, put the other person's needs first and then yours. And I see also a lot of this I've seen it in the beginning of my entrepreneurial, let's say, practice. And I see it also with my clients now. It's sometimes very difficult to, they mostly tell me they have the most difficulties letting go or trusting the process or being in the flow, because it's, I think in the human nature, as I see it, let's say, it's sometimes we say, oh, yes, or I will make a decision, and that is final, but it's those little doubts then in your head. They say, was it really okay? Should I have said it differently? And
for days and days and days, right, Sarah?
Yes, for days and days, and you go back and forth.
My trick to that, Sarah, was I had a mentor that taught me many years ago to let go of the idea of a right and a wrong choice. And that's wild to a lot of people who were raised, especially with a very strict set of values.
Yeah.
But taught me that instead of picking a right choice or a wrong choice or a good choice or a bad choice, that choice is a self-correcting process. So any of these processes that we're talking about, like learning how to say no and to let go of the guilt, trusting that I'm going to make a choice and I'm going to get feedback from that choice. And then based on the feedback, I can always make a different choice. It's fluid. I can change my mind. You know, there's very few things that can't be undone, except for death, as far as I know.
Yeah.
So we always have choices, and that's what's so empowering. We're always going to get another opportunity. So we don't have to get paralyzed in that scary place of it's hard to make a choice because I have to make the perfect choice.
Yeah. Dawn, I just wanted to ask you one question that a lot of people ask me, and I've heard different opinions. When you were saying, for example, when you say no, what is your opinion? Is it okay just to say, for example, no, and just a simple no, I cannot dedicate my time, no, now is not the right time? Or because a lot of time people think they need to over-explain it, you know, give a detailed explanation, why not? What are your thoughts?
So I have a lot of thoughts. I was taught that no is a complete sentence, and that is completely appropriate. And a lot of times when we over-explain, it's because we're doing what sometimes I call case building, you know, building our case for our response so that we feel that it will be more accepted by the person who's receiving it. And really all of that is about trying to control the way that someone perceives us. And that comes from an underlying insecurity. So I would say it depends on the nature of the relationship, and it depends on where you are in the process. So it's one of those things that I would say mindful of how you're feeling. When you say no, do you feel yourself compelled to explain? And if you do, can you sense that that comes from insecurity, or does it come from a genuine closeness in the relationship that you want to honor and acknowledge that? Did I answer y'all
Yeah. Yes, it makes sense. Thank you. It makes sense. Food for thought, let's say, but makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
I think for people early on, I'm sorry, Dagmar, for people who are early on in saying no, it can help to offer an honest explanation as you're moving through the process, and it probably gets easier later on down the road to just say, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I just thought about, it's the same with the sales process. Don't they say you give somebody an offer and then you stop?
Yeah.
And you let them think and make a decision. I really think it's the same when you say no, and consciously you say no because blah, blah, and then you need to stop yourself. Because if not, I have that. If not, you explain and more, and then it doesn't end. On the other side, they're already good. But now I feel worse and worse and worse about it. And sometimes, honestly, I switched it and say, oh, whatever. Yeah, okay, let's do it.
You took yourself out of it.
Yeah, because I couldn't stop explaining why. And then I felt my explanation was weak. So it didn't make enough sense. It wasn't valuable enough. The reason wasn't good enough why I would say no. So now since then, I say no because, and then I have to stop myself.
I really appreciate your honesty, Dagmar, because you're right on. And it was a great question. And Dagmar, your experience is absolutely one that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. I never thought about it, but as you asked this question, I thought about it and I thought, yeah, it's not only to say no, but to explain why no.
Yeah.
So self-awareness.
Yes, self-awareness.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Sala, can you stay with us?
Yeah. Okay. I would love to,
cool.
if you have me.
Yeah, stay. Cool. So I'm going to move on to number 3, and number 3 is you come first. And that's really one of the pinnacles of this process that we ultimately want to cultivate, is the idea that I come first. And that's not because I want to be selfish or not compassionate or loving to the people in my life, but it's because if my heart isn't full, or if I'm not in a well-balanced place, then whatever I give to everyone else is going to probably be a little messy. Meaning I'm more likely to say something hurtful, or to be short-tempered, or to not be fully present to that person or place or moment. And so it's really about kind of that saying, you know, when you're on the airplane and they are telling you about airplane safety in case you crash, that you should put your oxygen mask on. Like the oxygen mask is going to save you, but they tell you to put your mask on first, even before your child's. And the reason for that is because if you pass out putting on your child's oxygen mask, how is your child or your loved one going to be able to function if you're passed out? So that's the idea, is that I need to take care of my health and well-being first so that I can be present for other people. So there are a lot of people who are naturally empaths or intuitives that are natural caretakers, either in their personal lives or those types of jobs. And it's especially important for those people to have things in place, rituals, if you will, or coping skills or tools that they use to protect themselves so that when they enter into a place where they know that they're going to get inundated with a lot of please help me's, that their heart sponge is already full, so that you're not absorbing the negative or painful energy that comes from a lot of places in the world. So if you're one of those people who has a job where, like, a lot of nurses or first responders, people who experience a lot of trauma, you know, those are people who, if you're not really, really mindful of emotional caretaking, it can really cause some negative consequences to your own well-being. Those are the people that tend to be the best at it and the most loving and caring, but are also the most susceptible.
Yeah.
So make sure you put yourself first.
You know what I just thought about? I have a friend, and she works for the Department of Health and Families, and she oversees the kids' cases, the sexual abused kids' case and everything. And I ask her all the time, how do you deal with this? And she really says, I focus on how can I help them the most. Can you believe that? Like I would, as an empathetic person, focus on all these poor kids I feel with them and what a horrible life. And she said, if I would do this, it would kill me. So she takes herself out of the situation. And she, as an example, we have in our county, believe it or not, a lot of kids who don't have lunch or don't have dinner, right? Because there's just not enough to eat. And they organized the field trip, but they had to pay for it. Not a lot, but they had to pay for it. So now the kids who didn't have money couldn't go on this field trip. So she organized that her colleagues donated, and these kids could go. And so that's what she really felt great about. And I love that, because it's not saying yes to I help these kids, but saying yes to how can I find a solution for these kids.
Yes, that's a beautiful story, and I relate to it. I worked almost 2 years in that field before graduate school, and that's exactly what propelled me to finally apply to graduate school, because there were nights I spent the floor of my office with children sleeping in my office, and that's, it's definitely another one of those things that made me realize that I have to know what my limit is, because it was a dark time, because there's so much pain out there in the world, and you have to really be mindful of, I had to really be mindful of how well I was taking care of myself at that time in my life. Absolutely. Yeah. I think especially with children, it's painful because they're not equipped or able to be self-sufficient. So it's particularly tear-jerking.
Dawn, do you think that, for example, when we need to be mindful, does this also correlate well with the fact that we need to be really, we need to excel, let's say, or be really good at setting our personal boundaries, for example, to know, what cannot pass, or this is not mine, and so on, to easily, let's say, get through some really difficult moments or days.
Absolutely. And I think that is a challenging skill for a lot of people to learn, how to not take the outcome of a situation personally and to set your boundaries accordingly. Meaning, like, if you have that type of a position or any type of a position where you're dealing with the intricacies of people's lives and their health and well-being, to learn how to set your boundaries in a way that you don't take their troubles home with you, that you're not losing sleep, you're not spending your spare time worrying about them, it really takes discipline in the mind. That's really the boundary that needs to be set, is disciplining the mind. Stay present in the moment and to not be worrying about the future of people that are outside of your control. So that is the specific tip that I would give if you're trying to learn how to set healthy boundaries. Boundaries are not a tool to leverage other people's behavior or outcome. Boundaries are a tool to take care of oneself. So in that case, the boundary would be disciplining my mind to stay present in the moment, to stay positive, and to not rehearse negative and painful thoughts about other people's outcomes, to not personalize other people's outcomes. Great question.
Excellent. Yeah, that answers a lot of my thinking and a lot of my thoughts. Excellent.
Thank you for asking beautiful questions, and I'm sure that they're very helpful for all of our watchers.
Thank you. Thanks for your kind words.
So our next tip on how to say no if you're an emotional caretaker is to know your limits and triggers. And we just started talking about that a little bit, Zala, with your question. And that is, and Dagmar mentioned it earlier also, if you feel that feeling in the pit of your stomach. So know that if you have a thought, a feeling, or even a physical sensation where you're starting to feel stressed out, or you're not comfortable with saying no, start to really get familiar with what those limits are. And become familiar with the things that trigger you, meaning the things that leave you feeling so compelled to say yes that it almost feels impossible to say no. So those are probably specific people in your life, usually the ones closest to you. So triggers tend to be employers, like your boss, or your family members, or your children, or your spouse. Those tend to be your biggest triggers. There certainly can be others. But when you know what it is that triggers you, then you can go in with a plan. You can have a few what I call sayings in your pocket. And you can rehearse those or practice them or be so familiar with them that they become your automatic response instead of the old automatic response of, sure, I'll do that, no problem, and doing it with regret. So when you know your triggers, you can have a plan.
Oh, I love that, because in NLP, right, neuro-linguistic programming, yes, I learned to program myself for situations so that I don't react, but that I can act in a situation. And I love that what you just said, I can think about in advance when somebody asks me something, and they're like, normally there are things I get asked again and again and again, and half of the things I just cannot do because time-wise, but the other things I don't feel comfortable with doing. So in that, having something already ready to go. So when I'm asked the next time, say no, because that's the reason for it. It helps a lot just to take the pressure off.
You got it.
Yeah, very good point, Dagmar.
Yeah, and
my reality.
I love that you reference NLP, because absolutely that is a great tool and training out there, and that's absolutely what we're talking about. We are reprogramming. So
reprogramming.
Yes, reprogramming. Another quotable by Dawn.
Yeah, that's awesome, because if you think about, right, online Sala, right, we restructuring, we replanning, we reprogramming all the time, because what is right today and good today is normally not the best anymore in a month or half a year, or depending on the environment or situations. So this, what we naturally do in our business as entrepreneurs, fitting to the environment, we as humans don't do this. We allow this. What is that? In the old days, where did you hear music from? Not the music box. Yeah, where it's like the
gramophone.
Yes, gramophone. It's like you have the same disc running around, but there's no reprogramming, there's no replanning.
Right. Yeah. And so it's science behind when we talk about faith and spirituality here on these blab shows. That's the science behind it. Some people believe in spiritual concepts and some people don't, and that's okay because there's science behind what we're talking about. When we talk about reprogramming the pathways in the brain, when we talk about replacing thoughts, there is huge science behind that says that it is absolutely possible. And so for some people, we can explain faith as a process of reprogramming the mind to have a hopeful or positive outlook. And so for those of you out there that are spiritual, that's faith. For those of you out there that are science-based, that's brain science. For those of you out there that like both, even better. That's faith.
I love that because it makes sense for my logic.
Yeah.
So it's an exercise I can do, is an action step I can take.
Yep, you got it.
Exactly.
Okay, so our last tip for understanding if you are an emotional caretaker and you would benefit from saying no is how often do you ask for help, and are you willing to ask for help? So a lot of times caretakers are the ones that are the least likely to ask for help because they don't want to feel like a burden or they don't want to feel vulnerable. And so we become overwhelmed because we try to carry not only all of our own burdens, but then we try to carry other people's burdens or difficulties for them or with them. And so the more that you're willing to ask for help from safe places, don't keep going back to the same people who say no all the time. I call that going to the hardware store looking to buy a gallon of milk.
Yeah. Cannot do this alone? What's your issue?
If you're willing to ask for help, then that will free you up to have more space to take care of yourself. It allows other people the opportunity to feel those warm fuzzies for helping you. When it feels good to help someone else, other people like to have that opportunity to feel good as well. So especially in your mutual relationships or your partnerships, especially for spouses, especially in employee-employer relationships, that kind of give and take of being able to ask for help, that's what creates reciprocity, mutuality, synchronicity. There's so many great words for it. And it allows both parties in the relationship to feel satisfied because it's not a one-sided relationship. So if you're an emotional caretaker and you find yourself having a difficult time asking for help, that's one of your stretch opportunities. And you can, if you need to, say, I know that I don't normally do this, but would you be willing to help me with X, Y, or Z? To see what responses you get. You may need to ask more than one person. I'm a big fan of having a huge support team because, if you only ask one person, they may not be able to help you. But if you have a whole list of people that you can ask, then you're going to get someone that says yes. And I always tell people, give anyone in your life the dignity of their own choices. Meaning, don't think for them what their answer is going to be, and don't decide for them if you are a burden. Ask their question. Your answer is always no if you never ask. Just ask the question and give them the dignity of their choices. I had a friend a couple of weeks ago who was really struggling and she needed my help, but I was struggling the same day. And so I had to say no. And later on when we talked about it, she said, I felt like I was such a burden. And I said, hey, I get to say yes or no. And I said no. And then now I have time and I'm available and I'm saying I'm here for you. So give me the dignity of my choices. I love you and I want to be there for you. Don't decide for me what I'm thinking. And that was a great conversation I had with her. But be willing to ask for help and to receive it without feeling guilty. And that is our fifth and final recommendation for today's show about emotional caretaking.
Yes, and I think it's a key to feel valuable enough to ask for help too.
You're absolutely right, Dagmar.
Yeah. And feeling valuable is always, I love it when you always come back, Dawn, to the basic feeling of security and insecurity. So actually it always, I think, comes down to this. And I think that all of the programs or how we programmed our minds or were programmed for us, I think it kind of stems from this. Mostly, a lot of things stem from this insecurity. So I think it's really important to, be honest about it, to know your feelings, and then work onwards from this. This is what I not realized, but this is kind of the biggest thing that I realized during my life, my entrepreneurship, and my coaching. It's basically really need to be honest with these feelings.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right on. You're talking about emotional awareness and knowing where your growth opportunities are to improve your self-worth and your self-esteem. And you're right, a lot of these lab topics, we talk about forgiveness or hopelessness or emotional caretaking. These are all branches on a tree or paths on a map to the same destination, which is self-worth, self-love. Whatever, rings or resonates for you. Yeah. You have great insights, Ala. Thank you so much. So thank you all for being a part of this chat, whether you're watching it live or you're watching the recording. Please join us every Monday at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I would love to have you on the show, answer any questions. And I always love suggestions for blog topics as well. And if you're interested in speaking directly with me, please don't hesitate to reach out to my website, dawnwigginstherapy.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, subscribe to the YouTube channel where all of these videos are posted, and you can always call me as well.
Yeah, I just posted you on the house consult.
Okay.
So everybody who's interested to check this out with you, they just can click there and then connect with you.
Yes, if you want to learn more about how therapy might work for you, absolutely sign up for an on-the-house consult, and we can get to know each other a little bit and work it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I posted the link to the blog post because Dawn always creates a blog post combined with this blog. So after we have the blog recording from blog, we will upload it to a blog post, and then you can go back, because what I experience, I have to hear things again and again and again to really observe every detail of it, because right now I'm just hearing what I want to hear. So then perhaps next week, when I have more experience, have another situations with family, clients or whatever, then I hear other things. So I love to listen to this again, because it really helps me. It's a trusted source. So like Dawn is, for me, an amazing therapist, because she wants that I improve. She doesn't want that I stay stuck. So it's interesting, very interesting concept.
You're absolutely right, Dagmar. When we hear things a second, a third time, we always hear something different. And that could be because we had a different mood that day, a different set of experiences, but you're talking about growth and change, and you are right on, and it's beautiful, and I love it.
Yeah.
So
excellent.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Dagmar. You are both beautiful souls. I'm so grateful to have you as a part of our show today. And thank you to everyone who's watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next week.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye, Dawn. Bye, Dagmar. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
We both got to run, right?
Yes.
Okay. I love you, and I will see you on Friday.